Welcome to Olympian Cares, giving you the best in water testing and analysis. Today we're looking at Test Assured for something you may have not thought of. Maybe it's something that you didn't even consider, and that's testing for copper in water. Now, why is this important? When you think of heavy metals, you usually think of lead, cadmium, arsenic. And those are ones to test for, definitely. But copper is one as well. As it's abundant in the environment, it occasionally makes its way into drinking water supplies. It can also leach into water sources through rock, soil, and copper piping. And because copper has been found to cause several unpleasant side effects in human beings, similar to the other heavy metals I mentioned, developed guidelines on the amount of copper can be present in drinking water. That's why there's testing for copper contaminants to make sure they're at or below acceptable levels. However, if your drinking water comes from a private source like a well, your water generally isn't being tested. So what do? What's the best idea? And how does copper get into water? So copper is a metal that exists naturally in water, soil, plants, and even animals. And it can end up in the water supplies as a result of several different industrial processing, mining, farming, factory work. It could be from runoffs, and copper pipes even themselves can corrode, releasing more copper into the water. This is always a good idea when you get heavy metals tested in your water. Make sure that there's not a large amount of copper in the water. Now, how do you test for it? If you get your water from a private well, then you actually have to test it yourself or get a professional to do so. Now, if you're in an area in the city like Queens, Manhattan, if you're in the Bronx, then you can get a state certification officer to recommend laboratories that perform water analysis, including tests for copper. And it's always a good idea to get your water professionally tested by a laboratory and by people who have been doing it for a long time. That way they can isolate the different samples, they can test multiple samples, and people who have been doing it for a long time can give you more accurate results rather than just a home test itself. Professional testing can be expensive and can take you a while to get your results. So even if you're trying to do it yourself, it can take a little bit. It can be challenging. If the lab's not nearby, then you may have to collect samples yourself and mail them to the lab. Now, I recommend definitely that if you're watching this, if you're in Queens, Bronx, if you're in the Manhattan area, if you're in a big city area, it's going to be a lot easier to get a private and professional analysis done on this water to make sure that copper is not too high. You could test your water for copper with a home testing kit, and this is one way to do it, and it's quite simple. You remove the test strip from the packet, you pick up the strip at the end with no pads, you dip the strip and sample 3 times and remove without shaking off the excess water, hold the test strip for 2 seconds, and place the strip on the result color chart to determine the copper level in your water. Now, what are normal copper levels in drinking water? 2.0 milligrams per liter is the maximum allowable level of copper set in the water by the World Health Organization, and 1.3 milligrams per liter or 1.3 ppm maximum contaminant level goals, MCLG, set by the Environmental Protection Agency. So those are what you can look for. That being said, testing for copper regularly is a good idea. The EPA does recommend it, especially in drinking water, be at levels below 1,300 parts per billion. And that's going to be tough to test it always with a testing kit. While it is an option, like I said, if you're in a big city, Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, or in any of those areas, then it's always a good idea to get your water professionally tested and also keep in mind professionally tested and analyzed for copper.